Hello, 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 and welcome to Bookish Talk. It's the show that encourages bookish readers and empowers aspiring authors to write and publish their fiction or nonfiction story. I'm Michelle Keinan. Co-hosting the show with me is my friend and the author of 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes, Devin Galaudet. Hi, Devin. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderfully. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good. Me and my hat are doing good today.
You are styling this morning. Well done.
Well, we have a really enlightening show today. So in our Writer's Corner for the month of May, we're exploring Devin's passion, which is travel writing, which is so cool. I'm loving learning everything from you and everything that you get to do with your work. And last week, he shared some tips on how to write a travelogue. Today, Devin is going to share how to become a freelance travel writer, which I feel like is the dream, right? Getting paid to travel and then brag about all the fun that you're having and everyone else gets to read about it. Devin, did you bring your personal travelogue today?
I did. And if we have time, we'll get to it. We've got a packed, fantastic show. So I'll cross my fingers. And if not, we'll get to it in the future.
Okay, cool. I'll make sure. I'll try to make sure because I love hearing you talk, and I know that our viewers love to learn from you too. Today, I'm really excited also because in the Author's Corner, we have our first romance author, New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, Alessandra Torre. She's written 23 romance novels, and her first book, Blindfolded Innocence, was a breakout hit that attracted the interest of major publishing houses and garnered her first print deal with Harlequin. And then 12 months later, she signed a second six-figure print deal with Red Hook Hachette for the Deanna Madden series, which is an erotic suspense trilogy. Torre has been featured in Elle and LUK, as well as guest blogged for Huffington Post and RT Book Reviews. She's the bedroom blogger for Cosmopolitan.com, so I'm sure she is a treasure trove of information. And I can't even believe it, she's also the creator of Alessandra Torre Inc., which is an authors community and online school with over 20,000 members. She's the founder of Inkers Con, which is an annual authors conference. This woman is busy, okay?
She's a rock star, totally.
And oh my God, this is like out of left field when I found this out. In 2019, she also co-founded Authors AI, which is a company that uses artificial intelligence to help authors with their development and editing process. In November of 2020, Authors AI launched Binge Books, an online community that helps readers discover their next great novel. But before we talk to her, Devin, I have kind of a personal question. Have you ever read a romance novel?
So, I really want to say no, as you might imagine, but I'll be frank with you. When I was 15, I worked at B. Dalton Booksellers. If you're probably not even old enough to remember that.
Excuse me, I remember, okay.
So anyway, I worked at B. Dalton when I was 15, like 15 to 17 in high school. And I have to say, the guys in the back room would, like, when the Harlequin romance novels would show up, we would scan to find the saucy passages. So yeah, I've read a few. I don't know if cover to cover, but yeah,
the good parts, right? Yeah, our parents thought we were being all innocent, hanging out at the library and at the bookstore, but little did they know, right?
Oh yeah, no, there was an ulterior motive.
All right, so we'll get into that in a little bit, but first, can you tell us about our virtual bookstore in Portugal?
I sure can. Michelle, last week, our virtual background was of the second oldest from 1881 bookstore in the world, the Livraria Lelo Irmão, which is commonly known in English as the Lelo Bookstore. I've been there. Today, we are going to talk about the oldest bookstore in the world, the Livraria Bertrand in Lisbon, Portugal, number 3.
Wow.
I've also been there. It's very cool. So I'm going to tell you about it. The Bertrand bookstore was officially opened to the Portuguese public back in 1732. Their certificate of confirmation from the Guinness World Book of Records is displayed proudly on the entrance window from the outside. The bookstore appears to be just kind of like a compact little corner shop. But once you make your way inside, The building has tunnels that allow the store to kind of spread through multiple rooms throughout the building, with all of the walls covered in shelving. And of course, all kinds of little islands and lots of fun things like that, just piled and piled high with books. The ceiling archways inside the space give the bookstore kind of a breathable nature. The space is somewhat comparable to a church in the sense of it being quiet and peaceful, and even at its most chaotic moments. With its worldwide popularity, there is a wall dedicated to English language books. And I'll be frank with you, Portugal is a tiny country,
Yeah.
so everybody speaks English. And so it's not surprising that they have a wall dedicated to English language books. However, Bertrand Bookstores keeps things very Portuguese. Most of the books are in Portuguese, with books titles and concepts ranging from everything from cooking to fiction, science to esoteric ideas, and biographical to photography. So they have everything.
Well, Portuguese is such a beautiful language. And oftentimes when I travel, there's two places I like to go to get into the culture: supermarkets, but also libraries and bookstores. And on the show, one of our missions is to inspire travel and also visiting libraries around the world. But Devin, I actually have an empowering bookish story that when I heard this, I was like, wow, we definitely have to share this on the show today. So Ukraine, and obviously everybody knows all the tragedy and the struggle that's going on in that country, but the people really have an indomitable spirit, and it was in full display last month in the city of Kharkiv. They did a reading of the book Go the F to Sleep, which if you're a mom or a parent of young children, you either know this book or you said these words out loud, go the F to sleep. And they actually did this reading in an undisclosed bomb shelter, which is wild. A Ukrainian translation of this New York Times bestseller was presented by its translator. He's a famous writer and also a Kharkiv native. His name is Serhiy Zhadan. While projectiles struck the area an hour before the event began. Like, I can't even imagine, but he said that they decided to go ahead anyway. And local journalists even showed up to cover the events too. It's just wild. Like, Devin, I feel like this is a reminder about how stories not only bring people together, but they also help us move through hard times too. Do you have any inspiring or wild stories like this one?
Oh, yeah, no, we'd be here for a month. The truth of the matter is this is why we read, because it brings our world closer, and it brings in things that maybe we would not have thought or experienced on our own. So I think it's incredibly important what's taken place here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you were going to tell us about a new author. Isn't that right?
Well, I do have a story, but it's of an old author.
Okay.
And unfortunately, this author, maybe before your time, Henry Patterson, the best-selling novelist who wrote The Eagle Has Landed, has died at age 92.
Yeah.
He was a prolific writer. Patterson wrote 85 novels, predominantly thrillers in the espionage spy genre, using the pseudonym Jack Higgins. He is most synonymous with the writing of The Eagle Has Landed, which is set in the Second World War, which was published in 1975, and it sold a whopping, this is ridiculous, 50 million copies, and was adapted into a British film which starred Sir Michael Caine, Donald Sutherland, Jenny Agutter, and Robert Duvall. So a super rock star cast.
Right.
And Michelle, we today have Suzanna Doyle-Ingram, who was with us last week, the CEO of Prominence Publishing, on the show. On the show to share some perspectives. And when we come back from break, we will meet Alessandra Torre, author of 23 books. We'll be right back.
Yay.
We've been wanting to come to Key West for years. In any other town that I've lived in, when people ask you what you do and you say, oh, I write novels, people are like, wow, that's really cool. Here they're like, oh yeah, I wrote a novel. It's like, it definitely is a place that attracts creative souls. When I published my first book, I was overwhelmed with like 3 sales. That was how many I had my first day. But then 3 months in, like everything changed. Like overnight, I went from 10 sales to 100 sales, and then 1,000 sales and 2,000 sales. My first book was this like breakout success, but then it took 6 more books before I hit that level again. When I hit the New York Times list, that was the moment when I felt like I made it. I took a moment, was just like, wow. It's really cool to see your name next to these household names that I grew up reading. One of the main ways I use Jotform is for my signed book order form, which I open twice a year to readers. I'm not very tech savvy, so what I needed when I started looking at a solution for setting up book orders was something easy that wouldn't take me much time, and I could jump in, jump out, and not make any mistakes. That was really the main thing. And that was one of the things I loved about Jotform, is I literally set up my book order form within 30 minutes, and that included 20 books, images of every book cover, and I can ask them for personalization options, and then I sign all the books, print out a label, and send it off. And one of the things I really loved about Jotform was its integration with PayPal, because while getting the payment is important and great, what I really needed and what it provides is the ability for me to then immediately print a label with everything that PayPal collects on the payment end. Prior to Jotform, we used to take book orders, and then we would take that information, print it out, and then my assistant would insert it all into our shipping software. And it was problematic. It took a long time, and we were always kind of jumping back and forth between the two processes. With the PayPal integration with Jotform, all of that comes through, and I can literally just add the weight and print the label, and I'm done. It's an integrated all-in-one solution, and when I say it cut down the time I spent in preparing those packages in half, it cut it down by hours and hours. It makes my life so much easier, and it has made the entire book order process system seamless, and that's what I needed. I'm Alessandra Torre. I'm in beautiful Key West, Florida, and I love Jotform.
All right, we are back. And one of the things that I love about co-hosting this show is everywhere I turn, every episode, even in the commercials, is another amazing author that's doing it, that's writing books, that's putting their work out there. Like, it's such an inspiration to me. And on our show, our mission is truly to enlighten, encourage, and empower all inspiring authors to begin and continue writing and publishing their stories. And we love to do that by inviting authors to the Bookish Club to share their journey. So today, we're really excited to have our first romance writer on the show. Devin, you have the honors.
I'm a lucky guy. We're a lucky group of people. Alessandra Torre is a New York Times bestselling author of 23 novels. Alessandra's first book, Blindfolded Innocence, was her breakout romance novel, rising to the top of the ebook charts on Amazon, where it attracted the interest of major publishing houses and garnered Torre her first print deal with Harlequin HQN. Creator of the Alessandra Torre Inc., a writing community of over 20,000 authors, and CEO of Authors AI and Binge Books. That's a lot going on. Alessandra, welcome.
Thank you.
Our mission here, as we've already said, is simple: to enlighten, encourage, and empower aspiring writers. Let's start with your genre of writing. Did you choose romance, or how did that take place, and why?
Yeah, and why? I love that question, because I was always I was a reader. I never thought about writing. I thought big, important, brilliant people in New York, did that. And I never thought about writing, but I was a reader, and I read actually suspense and thriller novels was all I read. And so I actually read everything except romance. I was dead set against romance. And it was really just like, I was a snob about it. I just didn't want to read romance novels. I wanted something unpredictable, and I didn't feel like I could find that in a romance novel. But when I was 28, it was 2012, I sat down and thought, I had a summer ahead of me. I thought, I'll write a book. It was like a whim that I thought I would do that summer. And I sat down and I wrote a romance novel, which was not my expectation at all, but that is what came out. And it was called Blindfolded Innocence, and I self-published it. And I wasn't expecting it to become anything. And then suddenly it became something huge. And I had a publishing deal, a multi-book publishing deal. So I had to deliver another romance. And then I had an audience that was wanting more romances. So before I knew it, I think I've written 25 romances, maybe 26 romances. But I always said, once I have, the freedom, I really want to write suspense. That's really what I want to write. And I write suspense also under A.R. Torre. That's my other pen name. And so now I have 3 or 4 suspense novels that are out too. So I juggle both worlds, killing and falling in love.
same thing.
Yeah, same thing, One often leads to another.
So when you started, obviously you're 28. Did you get support from family and friends? How did that, and if it didn't go well, how did you overcome it?
So initially, when I sat down to start writing a book, as soon as I realized that it was going to be a romance novel, I hadn't really told anyone about it anyways, other than my husband. But once it took, a dirtier turn, I was like, there is no way anyone can find out about this book, we cannot tell a soul. So my husband's like, okay, we won't tell a soul. And then he immediately went to the next room and called my sister and was like, Alessandra is writing a book, and I'm worried that no one's going to buy any copies. So on release day, you got to buy a copy, like buy 2 copies or whatever. And they're ebooks. So unfortunately, you can't really buy a lot of copies, So he didn't tell me that he told her, but so on release day, I had 3 sales. One was me, one was my husband, and one was my sister. But that was the thing. It was like, we are sworn to secrecy. No one can tell. And finally, he told me that she knew, and she was like my best friend. So it was a secret. But then about 3 months into the book, it started taking off, and I was making like $5,000 a day on book sales. And it was like, how can I not tell my parents about this? You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking to my mom and she's babbling about, the next door neighbor's cat. And I'm just like dying to tell her.
Yeah.
She's like, what are you doing today? And I'm meeting with agents, and I can't, she's not a part of any of this. So I said, okay, so I'm going to tell my parents, and my parents are very cool. But I said, I wrote a book, I published it. It's doing really well. You cannot ever read it. My mother still to this day has not read it. My father, I am fairly certain, immediately went and while I was still on the phone with him. But he hasn't ever said anything to me about it, so I appreciate that. And so I told them, and then we kind of came out to, it was like coming out, we came out to our friends. And the problem was that first book was about swingers.
Oh.
The couple were swingers. So the problem is, it's same thing. When I read 50 Shades of Grey, I was like, definitely E.L. James has got a red room in her basement. Like 100%. Like there's no way that she doesn't have a red room. And so I completely understood that. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to tell anyone, because I was like, everybody's going to think that we do this, and we definitely had a large group of our friends that took like a giant step back. It was like, we've known you guys for 10 years. Like, if we were going to propose something, it would have happened already. But suddenly, they there was definite withdrawal from certain people. Certain people is the opposite effect, right? Like people that I didn't know were suddenly like wanting to be new best friends. But thankfully, then I wrote another book, and the more books you write and the more different characters and different situations and different, romantic themes that you address, people are like, oh, okay, like she obviously isn't all of these characters, so, we understand that there is, creativity in place, especially when I started writing characters that were killers and things like that in my romance novels. But there was that, it was like a big decision. And I recently chatted with E.L. James about that, because I said, how did you like, she not only had to come out to her family and friends, I mean, she had to come out to the world as who she was, you know? And I was like, was that like a huge scary thing? Because, you know, before you were kind of protected. But she was like, she said one day somebody knocked on her doorbell, you know, knocked on her door, and she opened it up, and it was this little young reporter. And he said, "Are you E.L. James?" And she was like, "Shouldn't you be in school?" And she like shooed him away. But she came inside and she said, "Well, I guess cat's out of the bag." So,
Wow. That's incredible. You know, I feel like there's it's also really inspiring because I feel like there's so many people out there that either have a message or a story inside of them, but they're afraid, like, what will people think, or how will people respond to me? And so they really hold themselves back. And so it's really cool to hear how you went through that, but that you didn't let that stop you. And I also think it's very funny that when it comes to romance, people would be like, "Is that really you?" But when it comes to killer stories about killers, nobody thought it would be you, right?
Let's hope not.
Yeah. That's great. So I want to share, you made a video on how you simplified writing in a 60-second clip. We're going to put it on now.
cool.
Book. This is your book from start to finish. This arc is made up of scenes. So here I'm using in this drawing circles to indicate the scenes. So here are the scenes. Again, there's maybe like 30 circles here. Maybe you only have 10 circles in your book. Maybe you're writing a short story and you only have 5 circles in your entire book. But these are all of the different pieces. If you can write one scene, you can write a book. If you can write one scene, then you just write one scene after another scene after another scene. Put them in the right order, you have a book. The end. Writing a book is not that hard. All you have to do is learn how to master this. One scene. If you can master that one scene, you have a book.
All right. Well, when you make it that simple,
Anybody can do it.
All right. We have no more excuses. Anyone that's all it takes. But I do actually have one question, because this is something I always get tripped up on when I'm writing. Can you share with us your strategy in choosing book titles, and how important is the title, and why it matters so much?
Yeah, titles are tough, and titles are incredibly hard. And sometimes I know the title from the very beginning, you know, like I know I want to write a book and I have this great title. Other times as I'm writing, like a keyword in a scene, you know, or a line, I mean, a keyword in a line will stand out. And I'm like, oh, that would make a great title. And then there are other times, majority of the times, when I have finished the book, the cover designer is sitting there waiting and I have to come up with a title and I have absolutely no idea. And I've gone to readers before. I've said, hey, here's, you know, the 3-sentence synopsis of the book. Hit me with your best title ideas. Whichever one I pick, you know, gets a signed copy of a book. And I've done that before. That's how I got the name Love Chloe. And then my recent books are with Thomas & Mercer, which is a traditional publisher. And I sent them a list of like 20 ideas. And then they came back and said, those were great. How about this title? And I said, okay, that sounds good. Let's go with that. So yeah, so the publisher often picks or dictates the title also.
Okay, that's good to know. Tim, did you have a question to ask?
Yes. Alessandra, what a great story. What a pleasure to meet you. I love the whole concept of trying to tell your family and friends about doing this. You know, as a writer too, I can relate to that. It's not easy. They don't know how crazy you are when you're a writer. So you always have to deal with that. But I want to ask you about your book, Hollywood Dirt. It was made into a movie. I was wondering if you could discuss with us how that process developed. Yes, very cool. Look at that. Look at that cover.
Yeah. The process of how it happened?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I'd had a few other books that were optioned. I have a film agent in Los Angeles. So I have my book agent and then I have my film agent. My film agent pitches my books as films. So I had already had a few books that were optioned, and it dragged on, and then it would fall apart, right? So I got an email, just a random email one day from Tosca Musk, Elon Musk's sister. And she said, hey, me and a couple ladies are starting a studio that is focused on romance novels. We make movies that are exactly like the book. We will involve the author heavily. We're really interested in Hollywood Dirt. Can we have a call? And I'll take a call with anybody, So I was like, sure, let's do it. But I was thinking, this isn't going to happen. Like, this isn't going to lead to anything. So we had a call. They were like, we love it. We want it. We want to start filming in 4 months. And I was like, sure, sounds great. Send me an agreement. And so we signed the paperwork. And then they sent me, auditions, and they sent me the script. What is amazing about the studio, and I don't know how much they've now done 20 movies or so, but I was their very first book movie. And when I was involved in everything, and it was so different from every other Hollywood experience I've had, where they're like, okay, go away and don't bother us, and we'll let you know when the movie's out. Like, that is like normally how it is, at least for me. But this, I was involved in everything, from the music to where they filmed to everything. But I didn't believe, I continually was like, this movie isn't going to happen. Like, something's going to happen. Something's going to fall apart. And it wasn't until I flew out for day one of filming. I was on set the very first day, and we were standing in a Dunkin' Donuts factory that was no longer a Dunkin' Donuts factory. It did not have, we had to turn off the heaters because it was too loud for filming, and it was freezing cold. So we're all like bundled in parkas, and they're starting to roll. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I think this is actually going to happen. Like, I think this movie's going to happen. And that was the only time I believed it, is when we were on set. And I have a cameo, it's not like, I don't have a line or anything. But yeah, if you watch the movie, it's on Amazon and Passionflix. If you watch the movie, keep an eye out, and you might catch me.
Very cool.
That's fantastic. I'm going to jump in here and just say I'm so happy to be chatting with you today. Thank you so much. It's so exciting to talk to someone who's written so many novels and had so much success. And what I love about you is all the help you give to aspiring writers. And I know you have Alessandra Torre Inc. and Inc. Con, I think it is. What advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Oh, man. I would say I have so much advice for aspiring writers, but the main thing is just, which we hear all the time, which is finish the book. Yeah. And it's really easy once you start. There's so many resources online, and that can be a double-edged sword, because there is so much, and there's so much to learn. Like, you can so easily be like, oh, well, I can't write a scene right now because I have to learn how to write a scene and how to develop characters and how to, create plot arcs and foreshadowing and all this stuff. And it can become so overwhelming. And when I first started to write my first book, I bought like a stack of books, and I hated almost every one of them because they were so intimidating to me. The exception was On Writing by Stephen King. It is my favorite book. If I meet anyone who says they're writing a book, first thing I do is I say, give me your address. I'm going to mail you something. And I send them On Writing by Stephen King. It is it is calming. I mean, it is not intimidating. He speaks to you like he's sitting across from you at a coffee shop. And that was the book that I read half of it, and I set it down. I was like, I'm ready. I'm going to write this book. And I sat down and I wrote the book. So the best way, you gotta get down. And the other thing is, first drafts are crap.
Yes.
And you just have to understand that I've written 30 books. I have no idea how many books I've written, but my first drafts are still horrific piles of crap. And it's okay, because I know that. So I'm not judging them, and I understand, and anything can be fixed and rewrite. And if you think your book is terrible, it probably is, but it's a first draft, and that's fine. Just keep plowing forward, get to the end. And honestly, you can make magic out of anything in rewrites. So just get to the finish line, and then pat yourself on the back, have a cupcake.
That is great advice. Great advice. And what's your vision for 2022, if I may ask?
Oh, man. Well, I got to finish the book that's due in 6 days. And then this is going to be an exciting year. So I have a book releasing in September that I finished a year ago. Publishers take much, much longer than that. That's the beauty of self-publishing. I have hit the New York Times list 7 times with self-published books.
That's great.
I found my greatest success in self-publishing. So I'm a huge advocate for self-publishing.
Yeah, me too.
I am traditionally published, but until I was with Thomas & Mercer, my traditional published books were my worst performers. But the traditional process is much, much longer. The beauty of self-publishing is I can finish it and it can be out in the world, a week later. I have a book releasing in September, and then it's just, I got to get through all the other businesses that I am involved in. And then my goal is to really write 2 or 3 books next year. I used to write 4 books a year, and now I'm down to 1 book a year just because I'm so busy with the other stuff that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Making it into a business.
Yeah.
All right.
Cassandra, can you stick around and share some notes from your book, The Good Lie, towards the end of the show?
Of course.
Great. So when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Alessandra, as well as travel writing with me.
An empowering quote from Nelson Mandela stated, "The greatest glory in life lies not in never failing, but rising every time you fall. Encourage, enlighten, empower."
I'm Alessandra Torre. I'm the author of Hollywood Dirt, and I'm so excited to be here.
So first off, describe to me how happy you are to see your book Hollywood Dirt come to life as a movie for worldwide audiences to capture on the screen.
It's amazing. I mean, it's the dream of every author. You want to see your book come to life, and it's what every reader wants. That's always the question you get, like, oh, are any of your books going to be made into movies? And they don't seem to realize that it's such a small percentage of books that get made into movies. I mean, it really is. So the fact that Passionflix found this novel and has been able to just inject the type of enthusiasm and put it all together is just amazing. I didn't believe it would actually happen until I was here on the ground watching, dialogue being said.
Right.
I think what stood out with Hollywood Dirt is it's just such a great story. It's about a small town, and Hollywood comes to film a movie, just very similar to this situation.
Right.
And so it's really neat because you're reading about a movie being filmed, and here you're going to be watching, and we are watching a movie being filmed about a movie being filmed. So it's really neat because if there's a camera that gets in a shot, or if there's a person in the background for a lot of scenes, it doesn't matter because you're recreating that fake set.
And how is it like being able to have, Johan Erb, Emma Rigby, and, many more of these talented stars, bring your characters to life on screen?
I was terrified of casting originally. I mean, because you're just so worried that it's not going to be the right person, or they're going to come across wrong, or they're not going to understand the character. And with these cast, everyone's read the book, which is amazing, because normally actors just have a script to go off of. Right. But with this, they have the book, so they really understand all the dynamics of their relationship. And I couldn't be happier with the casting. I mean, they've just really done an amazing job. And it's been so neat to see a face, and expressions and actions and all of the background and everything behind just what was just a simple line in a book.
And it's beautiful scenes shot too for the movie that people can most definitely check out. And what do you hope audiences will, take from this movie?
Well, the point of all of my books is hopefully, a lot of readers read for escapism, or just to, experience a different life, or experience a different world, or distract them from their current life. And so that's what I just hope it's enjoyable and entertaining, and that they fall in love with these characters as I did when I wrote them, and as so many readers did, when they read them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great.
I just got a baby rooster. Cocky. Is that the most original name?
It's a chicken. I mean, you don't need to give it a name or put a bedazzled collar on it.
Oh man, that's
That
great.
looks good.
I love that. I love that. Oh man, I really didn't know so much about the world of romance writing. So that was really enlightening for me. But welcome back, everybody. We are in the Writer's Corner right now. So in this segment, we encourage our inspiring writers to get out of their comfort zone, like we're doing on the show today, and write about their travel experiences. Hey, Suzanne, are you familiar with the genre?
Well, yes and no. I haven't written any travel myself, but I coach people how to write books. So I'm working with someone right now who's writing about his experience in doing the Dakar rally on a motorcycle, and then another woman who's sailed all around the world. And I love to travel, so I think this is something I should try.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, my husband is super interested in that Dakar rally, so I'll want to circle back with you later to find out more about that book. See, and that's the cool thing, right? All these books, all these experiences, we get to connect and share with each other. And I think that's one of the reasons that travel writing is a genre that's becoming increasingly popular. And it seems that each week a new travel book gets published, and every day more writers are interested in writing one, which is amazing. That's part of why we're here today. Last week, Devin shared with our viewers how to write a travelogue, and today he's going to share with us how to become a freelance travel writer. Tell us, Devin.
It's such an enormous topic. I'm not entirely sure where to begin with it, but we'll do our best. But probably the most important thing to understand is that freelance travel writing basically means that you're not working for anybody in particular. You're on your own. And you're writing for whomever you can write for. And that means you're going to have to find out, well, who's publishing travel, who's paying for travel, because if you want a job, you should get paid. And in the beginning, you're probably not going to be getting $1 a word. You're probably just going to try to get your words out there however you can, writing about whatever it is that you can. And maybe your first travel article won't be about Paris. It might be about your backyard, meaning wherever it is that you're living, no matter how small it might be, that's probably where you're going to start out. But in terms of the practicality, there's some things that you should probably definitely consider. First off, write a lot. You have to find out if writing is even your bag. There's a lot of different kind of suggestions and ways that you can go about it, but understand that, let's say if you get hired, you sell 4 magazine articles, they may be all due on the same day, and you have to deliver, because that's how you're going to develop a reputation. So start by writing a lot. Probably the best way to figure out if this is a career for you is to see if you can handle the workload. Some suggestions may include write 3 500-word blog posts a day, every day for a whole week, and then you'll kind of discover that you've got whether you have the temperament for it, where you can sit in a room in front of a computer, in front of a pad, and get it all the words out. And this is probably true of any type of writing that you're going to do in terms of, let's say, magazine types of work. So you may want to start there, and probably at the end of the week, you're going to have a pretty good idea whether or not you have sort of like the capacity, the comfort level for this type of work. But if you do, the perks can be pretty fantastic. I've been to 86 countries around the world. Wow. I've been wined and dined all over the globe. And the truth of the matter is, particularly if you're working with a tourism board or something like that around the world, their job is to make sure that you love your experience. So understand that there's a lot of perks and bonuses, and particularly, like if you're like me, then you love travel. Really important, kind of like here's like step 2, is adjust your point of view. Travel writing, specifically freelance travel writing, is about working with different magazines, and those different magazines all have different styles, formats, information that they want to focus on. Like my first travel story was written for a trade publication, and I really begged them. That's really what had happened. But I read the submission guidelines, and I turned in a story, and there was a point in the story. I was in Mexico, and there was an animal called an agouti. And I wrote in describing that animal that it was proof that a hamster made love to a pig. I thought it was clever. I thought it was clever. And I remember the editor writing back and said, yeah, no, great line, it's gone. Because it wasn't their audience. And I had learned that you really want to focus in on the things that are going to work for the audience, and they're all going to be different.
Right.
So just understand that. You know, you're going to get all kinds of advice for things. You know, I just told you 2 seconds ago that I begged for my first travel writing job, and that's exactly what I did to get started on any level. I begged for a magazine called Nuestra Gente to hire me. It was a Spanish language magazine. You know, mi poco español was not very good, but I still ended up writing for them because I literally said to them, you know, when you're in a bind, think of me. And they're like, you don't speak Spanish. We won't think of you. And I said, I totally get it. But if you are in a bind, think of me. And they're like, we're not going to think of you. And I just kept repeating that thing over and over because I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't want to get off the phone with this person. And a month later, they called me up and said, we need 300 words on the health benefits of the chili pepper. And I don't care how you do it. And I need it in an hour and a half. Can you do it? And I was like, yes, I can do it. And I wrote, and that's how it started. Right. So you kind of have to go for it to some degree and kind of trust yourself that you have the ability to write. And again, if you've practiced, you've written some test articles, you've written about your neighborhood or your favorite restaurant in town, then you're going to start developing a basis of knowing what you can accomplish or not. But ultimately, I think you kind of go after that thing with a measure of passion. The way I looked at it, and by the way, like, you know, I was a freelance writer for, you know, probably 20 years, but I also had a website for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so I had to work with writers. And so I can tell you the people that were like, I can do this, I want to do this, I'm really willing to do whatever you need. Those are the people that I want to receive articles for. So just kind of go after it and trust me. You know, I remember once I got a yes from this one magazine editor, I ended up then spending the next 5 minutes trying to convince him that this was a terrible idea and that I could not do it. This was not a genius move on my part. But he eventually said, you know, if you turn something in and it's not quite right, I will spruce it up. And this, you will discover, is the joy of having an editor on your back.
Wow.
Or working with you. So it's a really good thing to have. Just know that if you're going to be working with, and I've got more to say on this subject, but if you're going to be working along these lines, just know that a big part of this is about developing relationships with editors, with publishers, getting to know magazines, what they're after, what they're looking for, read submission guidelines. You know, another component is that make sure that you can become indispensable to not only magazines, but to brands. And so brands may say, what, are you selling corn chips or something like that, Devin? No. What it means is, as an example, we'll be talking about this later, but I have kind of a travel guide with me. And I've worked with Rick Steves as an example many, many times because I promote their books when it makes sense. And I've used their backpacks to travel around the world. And then there's, you know, at the same time, countries like the United States is a brand on some level. So is Wales. And so is Visit Europe and Visit, you know, matter of fact, you put visit in front of any country and then you're going to have a thing.
Yeah.
And so that's it, right?
Exactly that. Yeah.
So make sure that you mention them. And then when you do, tell them that you've mentioned them. Contact their marketing departments and kind of make sure that you can be associated with travel brands where it's appropriate. I would kind of lean towards the idea that being organic and being authentic is far better than anything else, because I think we're being marketed to overall so heavily as just individuals that I think a little bit of subtlety and nuance is kind of a helpful thing to inspire somebody else's imagination to travel. And personally, that's ultimately the goal in my book, is like, I think we're supposed to travel so we get to know each other.
Yeah.
So understand that media outlets and travel companies are always trying to get their companies out there, their destinations out there, their attractions out there. And so you can be of service to them. And of course, you know, write the truth. The good news is that even if you have a bad travel experience, you can probably find something that you genuinely loved. And if that's the case, do that.
Yeah.
I suppose my final sort of major tip would be on top of sort of like being indispensable to brands, you also kind of can and should market yourself. Obviously, being a freelancer, you're kind of promoting and representing other marketplaces. In other words, within travel, maybe you're writing about specifically islands, or you're writing to the travel trade, or you're writing only to airline magazines or whatever, but you can write to them all. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you put yourself out there. Like I have devingallaudet.com, I have inthenotraveler.com, and I write about, well, me and how it is that I do things with that. So just make sure that you keep developing relationships. Let people know, even if they've never published you before, let them know what magazines you have been published in recently. I would also suggest that you write on spec. Not everybody goes that route. That means you write an article in advance and you cross your fingers that they'll pay you for it, and you see what happens. And if not, maybe that goes in your portfolio for the future or somewhere else.
Devin,
I hope all that made sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're just like a wealth of information. No wonder this whole month and probably beyond is dedicated to sharing your knowledge on travel writing. And what I'm pulling from this is to make lots of relationships with luxury places that are just going to like pamper me and spoil me and like feed me and take lots of pictures so I can like write all about that kind of life. I love it so much. Thank you. Make sure everybody to tune in next week because Devin's going to share more travel writing tips with us. But I just wanted to take a moment to say that Bookish Talk is sponsored by Pivot Point School for Entrepreneurs. So when you're ready to pivot from employment to entrepreneurship, I did it. It's amazing. Highly recommended. They will point you in the right direction. So visit thrivingwomennetwork.com to learn more about their 10-week online certification course and scholarship program. And when we come back, we're going to share our book recommendations with you.
Maya Angelou stated, "The life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. Encourage, enlighten, empower."
What attracted me to Eyewitness was being able to put my skills and interests into action. Writing for any hotel in the world is an amazing opportunity for a traveler who wants to make an income while discovering new places. Outreach to any hotel offering to create their neighborhood guide in Eyewitness. Get started by interviewing hotel staff and collecting their local recommendations. Through the hotel's insights, you get to discover each neighborhood's best-kept secrets, the unpredictable and the unexpected. The many colors to be found in the local market, fantastic architecture downtown, the best places to eat like a local, hidden treasures of urban art, or a great spot to watch the sunset. Share these discoveries with the world by creating a hotel's neighborhood guide. Use Eyewitness' friendly editor to select places, add tips, and source images to create routes and listicles for future guests to enjoy during their stay. Being able to work from anywhere at any time is a definite plus for those who have a passion for traveling and discovering other areas of the world. Being an Eyewitness writer is a long-term opportunity to make an income while traveling and writing. Join our community of writers creating neighborhood guides around the world. Traveling and writing has never been easier. Become an Eyewitness writer. Apply now.
And we are back. This is our Bookish Club section where we talk about our personal book recommendations with the goal, as always, to encourage you to venture outside of your comfort zone and explore different genres and styles of books. We are blessed to have Alessandra Torre with us, who's going to tell us a little bit about The Good Lie.
The Good Lie is a standalone psychological thriller. It's by my other pen name, A.R. Torre, and it's about a serial killer in Beverly Hills. And that's normally all I have to say. It's about a serial killer in Beverly Hills, but his latest victim escapes and has a story to tell police. But is the person that he's saying is the killer? Is that actually the killer? I don't know. So the main character is a she's a shrink who deals with killers. That's her area of expertise, and so she's hired by the defense to defend the supposed serial killer.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a winner. I want you to have all kinds of crazy success, and it looks like you do. So let's see what we've got next. Tim, what's on the schedule this week?
Exactly, and great book, Alessandra. Good luck with that as well. So my book for the week is Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. Now, I recognize that most of the planet over the age of 20 is familiar with this book. So let me just explain. If you've read the book, maybe a memory about going back and rereading it. If you watched the movie but did not read the book, you have a great opportunity to learn one of the greatest lessons in writing, which is a book is much more profound than the movie. As Alessandra knows, because her book is going to be much more profound than the movie for her book. And if you are one of the few that have lived in the jungle for the last 20 years and have not heard of this book is awesome. Now, let me begin by just saying that when you study Carl Jung, what you learn is Carl Jung's realization and understanding of the development of myths and symbols throughout time and their meaning and influence in our culture. And that's what this book is basically about. There's a Harvard symbologist by the name of Robert Langdon who is called to research a guy that's found murdered in the Louvre, and he's got symbols all over him, and it leads to discovery of some secret society behind the church. Now, let me say something here. We don't get into religious conversations and political conversations, so I want to say this as philosophical as possible, but he goes and discovers a secret organization that leads all the way back to the fact that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. Now, let me just discuss that philosophically. Number one, by the way, there's a book called Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which is actually the foundation that Dan Brown used, which a guy actually claims to actually have been able to track where he comes from, that bloodline. But let me mention on that topic, bringing Mary Magdalene, who started off as a prostitute when a 6th century pope said that about her. Now she's Jesus's wife, and that brings feminine and masculine into close proximity. That's the only comment I want to make, because as you guys know, I work on marriages and the whole equality as men and women being equal. And this Dan Brown book basically does that in elevating women to be in close proximity with men. So great book. Love the symbols behind it. Anybody who hasn't read it, you're missing a great opportunity. And then that will also lead to you reading all the other Dan Brown books, which is what I did after reading that one. So
I loved Holy Blood, Holy Grail. I read it like 25 years ago and then went on a whole Knights Templar thing for like 6 months. I'm going to go with this week Eyewitness Travel. It's an old book, but what I love about them, first off, we talked about travel narratives and travel logs last week, and we talked about the idea of travel guides and their differences, and this is a really good one. It weighs a ton, so you may not want to take it with you traveling, because it's like a weight. However, it's got crazy good maps, it's got crazy good photos, it's got really beautiful things to look for in terms of architecture, in terms of culture, and a variety of things. So I highly recommend it. I also brought this Rick Steves book because I remember somebody from my group interviewing him and interviewed him and introduced him as Steve Ricks. That didn't go over well, but so I will endlessly make up for that. Really talented writer who used to draw his own maps, and now he's kind of an institution unto himself. And we have Suzanne's book this week. Suzanne, what do you got for us?
Well, it's not fiction, it's nonfiction, since I am a nonfiction publisher, and it's called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And if you love it too, Alessandra, if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, this will change everything for you. It is such a good book about, for me, really what it helped with was bottom line is, when you receive money into your business, he helps you set up different bank accounts to put money for taxes, operations, owner account, profit. And it's, I was always confused by a P&L statement, to be honest with you. I was like, that is really not really how much money I have. You know what I mean? You got to have a PhD in accounting to understand that. So I love this. Is really, really simple. And he's a great guy. I highly recommend you buy this book. And you can also find him on YouTube explaining how to do it as well. And I really love this book.
We got some good ones to choose from this week. Thank you, everybody, for your book recommendations, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
So, what do you want to know? I was born in Queens and lived in Long Island long enough to develop an accent that made me pronounce my name wrong when I moved to Redondo Beach in high school. Robert Serini. They thought I was saying Robin. So I started going by my birth name, Roberto. It's just easier. My folks met at Alitalia on Fifth Avenue, and being an airline brat, I got to travel around the world for basically free. By the time I was 18, I'd seen a lot of the world already, so I decided to go somewhere really exotic for college. UCSB. Have you been? It's like another planet. I studied film theory, which is as useless as it sounds, so after college I moved to Los Angeles to just figure it all out. There at a bar called Tom Bergen's, I met a 7-foot-tall Aussie and apparently taught him how to drink an Irish car bomb. Being able to introduce an Australian to a new form of drinking is like how Ron Offerman orders a steak. Very rare. It must have left a mark, because a year later he wrote me saying that he remembered I wanted to be a travel writer and would I like to write an article for his travel magazine about living in the East Village. I did, and I did. And it must have been okay, because he's been sending me on trips around the world ever since. I've taken diesel flat-bottom boats down the Milanowski River into the Amazon to do ayahuasca with shaman. I've navigated the Northwest Passage in Russian research vessels, retracing the steps of some of the greatest explorers ever. I've trekked the Andes to stay at the most luxurious lodges in the world, and I visited impossibly remote Polynesian islands on hybrid luxury cargo liners. Travel writing pays excellent, but just not in money. So, to support my bon vivant lifestyle, I'm a filmmaker by day.
Now, Roberto has shot commercials for the likes of Victoria's Secret, Clinique, and Reebok.
Working for companies like this, people like them, to do things like that.
Excellent. Cut. Wrap. Thank you. Good. That was great.
All right, here's some other random facts about me. I did a series about a collection of rare, funky cookbooks that won a Taste Award this year and raised a good amount of money for food banks around the world. I have a series about sandwiches because I really like sandwiches. I collect old cameras and run film through them because I like to punish myself and throw away money. I once created a web series called The Brouhaha so I could legitimately drink beer for work. I won Taste Awards for my travel series on YouTube. I have over 200 films there, so something had to stick. I have a film in the permanent collection of the MoMA, so I get a discount at the gift shop for life. I have 2 passports. I'm an honorary member of the Explorers Club, and I won this trophy in Moscow for a hamburger recipe. I fly drones, I ride motorcycles, sometimes I fly drones while riding motorcycles. I've fallen out of planes, zipped across lines, hung off cliffs, got a tattoo at 3 a.m. in a Shanghai bar of a Da Vinci helicopter.
Let's get tattoos!
I have 0 complaints. Love what I do, love the people I get to meet, and find talking about myself reductive. I mean, if it didn't happen on Instagram, did it happen at all? And I think the reason I love to travel so much is because it's like going to war without an enemy.
Or maybe your enemy is your own ignorance. Or maybe it's the food. Probably the food.
What a life. I love this show because it encourages our viewers to not only limit ourselves to one category of book or literature, but also because you don't know what you don't know. And the more I host this show, the more I realize I don't know a lot about a lot out there. So for everyone that's watching, you may have a passion to read, but if you've only had limited exposure to literature, you may end up writing in a genre that doesn't suit your skills or passions. So reading from various literary categories allows you to be inspired by new voices and new ideas, just like watching this show. So don't forget, you can also watch recent episodes on E360 TV as well.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say the mention during the commercial of Tom Bergen's House of Irish Coffee in Los Angeles is where I went on my first date with my wife.
Oh.
Thank you for joining us on Bookish Talk. We sincerely hope that something we said encouraged, enlightened, and empowered you to begin your journey to write your legacy book. Be sure to join us at the Bookish Club and begin your journey to journal. Tune in next week and we will share more tips on writing and interview some great writers. Visit our website at www.thrivingwomennetwork.com and subscribe and leave a question, because you never know when it may end up on Bookish Talk. Thanks again for joining us.
Bye. See you next time.